I have my clients say you're in my head because I speak to their specific thoughts and feelings and experiences. I'm not afraid to be very specific in terms of what it is that they're thinking and feeling and what their day-to-day looks like.
You're listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Jill Perrick, a business and mindset coach who specializes in imposter syndrome. If you feel like you're not as smart, capable, or worthy as you actually are, and that someone is going to find you out, then you come to the right place. I went from being a struggling government worker, working my coaching business on the side, but feeling unworthy and burnt out, to making multiple six figures helping women overcome imposter syndrome so they too can sign clients, make bank, and have the business or career of their dreams. I am nothing special. I have a stuttering disability, ADHD, and I struggle with anxiety and depression. So if I can learn how to feel good enough and overcome my inner imposter, then so can you. Let's dig in.
Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Jill Perrick, and I am so happy to have you here today. We're going to jump right into it, guys. Today's episode is how to hear "you're in my head" from dream clients who are ready to pay you from just creating content. So the thing about me is I am never going to tell you to slide into somebody's DMs. Like, that is never going to be something I'm going to tell you to do unless you already have a relationship with them. And even then, like, I think having a conversation with somebody is amazing. Establishing that connection is great. But truthfully, I prefer to attract people through my content. And that is what I teach in my programs and my offers, which is essentially attraction marketing. I do have clients who have taught DM sales. I have taught clients who have created relationships with other people through DMs and using those kinds of strategies. But just from personal experience and from the experience of a lot of the clients that I work with, this is just the strategy that has worked for me, that attraction marketing. It has helped me create over $600,000 in my coaching business to date. And that is just how I like to do things. Okay. That is just what I like. If you are like, I'm not into it, that's okay. We're allowed to have different strategies because every strategy works. Just you have to work it. So typically my clients like to do things this way as well. And the ideal situation is you create content that really calls in the potential clients that you want to work with. And this just feels more normal, more natural to me. When I'm starting a conversation with somebody, if that was a strategy of mine, I ultimately know that I want to work with them at some point. And if that was a strategy I was using, I would be reaching out and talking to people, but knowing that that was the strategy behind it, right? And like, I know that there are people who, again, teach this strategy, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Just personally, I know that like I would rather have an authentic conversation than thinking like, okay, well, I'm starting this conversation to eventually lead them to work with me, right? Okay. Anyways, that is why I opt to do attraction marketing. So I definitely don't see it though as post and pray. I even have a client who would call it that, and that's, again, totally fine. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion and the strategy that works for them if that's something that they teach, but I know how activating content can be. I have only ever invested in people from consuming their content, not needing to have a conversation with them, not needing them to reach out to me and repeatedly have a conversation with me for me to be like, okay, you're worthy now of my money because you actually care about me. Like, just straight up fucking content that has encouraged me and empowered me to move forward with their work. That has been what has encouraged me to work with them. So how do we create content that really does call in potential clients and activates them into action, not just in like 6 months or so, right? Like right fucking now. I posted a reel not too long ago, and the title of that reel was something like "Fuck Pain Points." And the thing is, I think people are really taking this too far when they talk about you don't need to use pain points. You shouldn't. It's unethical, blah, 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 blah. I actually think pain points are essentially you speaking to things that your potential client is experiencing. That's it. It doesn't have to be this whole big thing like pain points. But the point of the reel, like the reason why I said fuck pain points, is because you need to take it so much deeper with their thoughts, their feelings, and their experiences. When you are actually talking to your ideal client's thoughts, like the innermost thoughts that they're having, when you're speaking to the actual experiences that they're having in their day-to-day, almost as if you were looking in their bedroom fucking window and seeing them journal or talk to their spouse or seeing them just like functioning in their everyday life. When you actually give those experiences words and articulation and you're able to communicate that in your content, people will literally say to you, "You are in my head." So, for example, I might say something to the effect of, you sit on your couch, on your phone, scrolling and seeing post after post after post of that coach that's making X amount of dollars, or this coach that's making X amount of dollars, and you start to feel that pit in your stomach of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Is this ever gonna work for me? This is an example of not only an experience that my potential client could be having, but also the thoughts that they could be having as well. Another thing that you can go deeper on is the emotion. So going deeper on talking about, you feel that pit in your stomach, that's anxiety, and you're afraid that you're never going to amount to the potential that you have inside of you. Thoughts and feelings for me personally can sometimes be really interchangeable, so I use them kind of in tandem with each other, but ultimately you are speaking to your potential client's thoughts, feelings, and experiences. It's not just pain points and pleasure points. Oh, you're feeling this and you're going to feel this after we're done working together, right? Like, you need to say more and you need to go deeper, and that is probably something that you're not doing. The reason why you're probably not is because you're probably thinking, I don't know how to be as specific, Jill. I don't know what my potential client is thinking, feeling, or experiencing. I don't want to go deeper because if I'm too specific, I'm going to rule out other people. And let me just speak to these things now. So the first thing is if you don't know what your ideal client is thinking, pack it up. Fucking pack it up. I'm going to be real as fuck with you guys. You are calling yourself an expert, and I am really all for things market research. Like, of course, I actually recently did some research and I really, really loved it. I haven't done it in so fucking long. I did it at the very beginning of my business, etc. But now that I have a full roster of clients, I take like intake forms and questionnaires and stuff like that. And that is super helpful for me. I also pay attention on my coaching calls. Obviously, I pay attention on my coaching calls, but I pay attention to the things that they're saying. So I'm really attuned to the things that they're thinking, feeling, and experiencing. But before I did all of that, I called myself an expert and I had to be attuned to what my ideal client was thinking, feeling, and experiencing. I had to believe that the assumptions that I would make were correct because I'm an expert. Right? So I really thought about the things that they were experiencing and put words to them and communicate to my potential client, even if I wasn't 100% sure, because I didn't have a ton of clients yet. I was really making my way in the industry back in like 2018, 2019, and the beginning of 2020. It's actually so funny because I was reading something from a group program that I ran back in the summer of 2019, and it was actually a launch where I had a $5,000 launch. It was my highest launch at the time. It was probably like the second time I had actually launched something. It was amazing. Like, I was so fucking happy about it, and I was like, holy shit, this is so surreal. Like, I'm working full time. I never thought I could make any money online at all. So anyways, I looked at the document from that launch, and the way that I was describing a person's feelings and the things that they were experiencing and stuff, I was like, no wonder this launch did so well. Like, even when I didn't have a big audience at all, even when I didn't really have any influence at all either, I did so fucking good on this launch because I was so specific in terms of the things that my potential clients were thinking and feeling. I didn't have the thoughts of the coaching industry. I didn't have the experience that people have different experiences and different thoughts that I couldn't think of. Like, and there's a ton of like nuance there as to why this launch was so successful, but something that I immediately noticed was the fact that I was very clear in my messaging. I was getting so specific, right? And this is something that I actually talk about all the time, which is the Dunning-Kruger effect. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is something that basically says that when you're closer to something, it's harder for you to articulate it. It actually gets more difficult. And that is something that I see with content and with being a coach in general. Sometimes we get so close to success and so close to like being a coach and being in the coaching industry, etc. And it's something that we've always wanted, but now that we're so close to it, we start to really overthink and question the things that we're saying and the things that we're doing. And that will happen with being really specific, right? You will start being like, but if I'm too specific, I'm leaving people out. I don't want to leave people out, right? And so you start to broaden your messaging, which is actually a big no-no. And the other part of it here is that when you're being specific, it's actually what's going to skyrocket you to 5K months and 10K months and beyond, but you're so afraid to do it because you don't want to offend somebody, or you don't want to deter somebody who's thinking about working with you. So you don't want to say a scenario or an example that they can't relate to. But that is exactly the thing that you're missing, hitting on those experiences and those feelings and those thoughts that your ideal client is having. So let's say that you're a relationship coach, right? And you are wanting to talk to your ideal client. You're somebody who helps them heal from their last breakup so they can start dating again. So instead of saying you're healing from your last breakup and looking to go on another date, you say something like you're out of the phase where you want to burn all your ex's shit, but you're not quite ready yet to download Hinge or Tinder. That's when you hire me. Again, this is something that is so simple, just a couple of different words and really specific things like Hinge or Tinder. You want to think about the fact that your ideal client isn't thinking in these very vague, broad ways. They are thinking in really specific, intricate ways. They are going through their life and thinking about these specific things. And you as the expert need to know that. And if you don't, you need to get to know it. You need to start to be more confident in your messaging, which is the whole other side of it as well, right? Is like people can be very clear in their messaging, but then they're not confident when they show up. And that's why these things are so closely intertwined, is you can have all the correct messaging, but if you don't feel confident to say that messaging, it's not going to hit. So let's talk about a couple ways that you can get hyper specific. So first, you can always ask your current clients. I do this all the time. I always ask my clients in their coaching calls or in their intake forms, questionnaires, etc. I ask them, how are you feeling before you reached out to work with me? That's a good question to ask. What was the final thing that made you say, okay, I need to work with Jill? What was the final tipping point for you? And these are really good questions to ask, because then you're able to be like, I remember on my sales call with that person, they are thinking this and they are thinking that. And you can write down and use that language and be very specific with it. You can also use social media to your advantage. There's nothing wrong with a good old poll or a question box on your Instagram stories. I do that sometimes when I'm asking my audience for help with something, or even just asking like, what is it that you guys are struggling with today? That helps a lot. Or I'll go into my broadcast channel on Instagram and I'll be like, what questions do you have for me, etc. But ultimately, you're going to get to know your ideal client's thoughts, feelings, and experiences by putting your thoughts out there and seeing what sticks. So for example, if you put something out there and somebody comments and says, oh my gosh, I feel this way, you're in my head, then you know that you are getting closer to really understanding what they're thinking, feeling, and experiencing. And when in doubt, be hyper specific, because you are probably really resonating with people more than you even realize. And just continuing to say these things, thinking about it this way, really putting yourself in the position of your ideal client, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and making sure that you're continuously doing that, that is going to compound over time. As long as you're speaking to those thoughts, feelings, and experiences, there is going to be a massive shift for you in terms of the content that you're putting out and the results that you're seeing from your content. And lastly, I've said this before, and I probably will say it 100 times over again, the subconscious mind likes to make everything about itself. So when you are giving examples, when you are talking in scenarios or stories, people will insert themselves into your example, into your scenario, into your stories, because the subconscious, again, likes to make everything about itself, and we naturally have an inclination to hear a story or hear something and think about, how can I relate to this? Because that is how we learn how to understand other people. That is how we learn to understand the world around us, is how it interacts in relation to who we are. So if you have a coach who you're seeing and they're talking about their offers and they're talking about like scenarios that their potential clients are going through and they're being specific, even if you can't relate to all of it, there's a piece of it that you're going to try to like insert into that scenario or example or story, because that is just the brain's natural inclination. Okay, so you don't need to stress out about being too specific, because the brain actually does it on its own. It inserts itself into stories and examples and scenarios because we're trying to relate, we're trying to understand. So to sum this up, I have my clients say, you're in my head because I speak to their specific thoughts and feelings and experiences. I'm not afraid to be very specific in terms of what it is that they're thinking and feeling and what their day-to-day looks like. We go deeper than pain points and pleasure points. We go deeper into their thoughts and their feelings and their experiences, and we make sure to communicate those things through content that calls in those people. It makes it so much easier to market and sell in this way through content that calls in those people. And it makes it so much easier because you're not having to slide into DMs. You're not having to chase anybody down. You are the attraction. You are the magnet. You are the lighthouse attracting people to you. You're putting your content out there, and you know that the right people are being attracted to you. Okay? Okay, I love you guys. Love you guys so much. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you found it very helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. Head to the show notes to learn how you can work with me, where you can buy my best-selling book, You're Not Special, and how to get on my email list for free. Screenshot this episode and add it to your Instagram stories, tagging me at YourCoachJill. See you next time.